Rachel, a waitress, juggled her demanding job with the sole responsibility of supporting her young daughter. She often observed an elderly gentleman with a tattered wallet, painstakingly counting out coins to cover his meager meals. Touched by his plight, Rachel embarked on a heartwarming mission. She discreetly covered his bill every time he visited, a silent gesture of kindness spanning 3 entire months. Little did she know that her act of generosity would soon unfold into an unforgettable encounter. One fateful rainy evening, as Rachel wiped the droplets from the restaurant's windows, a charming couple approached her with an air of anticipation. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Hello and welcome to Tales with Cekos. Today I am going to share an exciting story with you." In the quaint town of Maplewood, nestled snugly between the rolling hills that danced with the colors of the seasons and the vibrant downtown area bustling with life, stood a small charming diner called Betty's Bistro. This beloved establishment was a cornerstone of the community, a place where locals gathered not only to enjoy hearty meals, but also to share stories, laughter, and a sense of belonging. It was here, amid the clatter of dishes and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, that a young single mother named Rachel toiled away, working tirelessly to provide for her young daughter Lily. Rachel's days began at the crack of dawn, when the first light of day filtered through her small kitchen window, illuminating the space where she prepared breakfast for Lily before rushing off to her job. Her shifts at Betty's Bistro often extended far into the night, well after the moon had risen high in the starry sky, casting a silver glow on the sleepy town. Despite the long hours and the challenges that accompanied her role as a single parent, Rachel never complained. Her unwavering dedication and resilience were as integral to her character as the warm, inviting smile she offered to every customer that walked through the door of the diner. Among the regulars who frequented Betty's Bistro was Mr. Thompson, a frail, elderly man with a gentle demeanor and a penchant for the simplest meal on the menu. He was a fixture in the diner, his presence as comforting as the smell of bacon sizzling on the grill. With a weather-beaten face, etched with the lines of time and experience, Mr. Thompson's features told a story of a life well lived, filled with both triumphs and tribulations. His eyes, though tired and framed by crow's feet, held a spark of wisdom that Rachel found endearing and inspiring. Every Thursday, without fail, Mr. Thompson would arrive at the diner, shuffling through the door with a pocket full of change that he meticulously counted before placing his order. His routine was as comforting as the food itself, a bowl of hearty vegetable soup and a slice of homemade bread. Rachel had noticed that, despite his thriftiness and the apparent limitations of his budget, he never once allowed his circumstances to dampen his spirits or affect his treatment of others. Instead, he radiated a kindness that warmed the hearts of those around him, often sharing gentle words of encouragement with Rachel and offering a smile to the other patrons. As Rachel poured his coffee and served his meal, their brief conversations would often drift into deeper territory. Mr. Thompson would share stories of his youth, filled with adventure and lessons learned, painting pictures of a world that felt both distant and vivid. In those moments, Rachel found solace and wisdom, absorbing the lessons of resilience and gratitude that Mr. Thompson effortlessly imparted. Their bond, forged over countless cups of coffee and shared laughter, became a source of strength for Rachel, reminding her that even in the toughest of times, human connection could provide the support and understanding that one needed to persevere. The first tendrils of winter's cruel grip had tightened around the small town, biting through even the thickest coats on that particularly harsh morning. Rachel, having just finished her waitress shift at the local diner, felt the familiar sting of the cold as her hands rummaged through her own meager wallet. The meager stack of bills felt especially thin lately, a consequence of the season's slow business. Yet, her gaze kept returning to Mr. Thompson, a figure of quiet dignity huddled at his usual corner table. He seemed smaller today, somehow, the lines around his eyes etched deeper by worry. She watched as he meticulously counted out his change, the small pile looking inadequate even for the simplest breakfast. A pang of empathy, sharp and immediate, struck Rachel. She knew that tightening feeling in the chest, that fear of not having enough. It wasn't just a matter of money. It was about preserving dignity in the face of hardship. And in that instant, she knew she had to help. With a subtle glance around, ensuring her actions remained unseen, Rachel slipped a few extra dollars from her tip jar into Jenny's outstretched hand. Jenny, with her bright smile and understanding eyes, was a confidant in this small act of generosity. "Make sure his breakfast is covered," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible above the clatter of dishes and the low hum of morning conversation. Jenny's nod was a silent promise. The moment Mr. Thompson's face lit up, a brief flash of astonishment quickly overtaken by a profound gratitude, it warmed Rachel from the inside out. His eyes, usually the color of a stormy winter sky, softened, and a small, almost imperceptible smile flickered across his lips. It was a silent communication, a feeling that transcended words, and in that moment, Rachel knew her small gesture had been more than worthwhile. For the next 3 months, Rachel continued her quiet act of kindness, a secret she guarded closely. She never revealed to Mr. Thompson that it was she who had been ensuring his weekly meal was taken care of. Each week, she'd carefully set aside a small portion of her tips, an act she performed almost ritualistically. Mr. Thompson, unwavering in his stoicism and humility, never questioned the unexpected generosity. He'd come in, always at the same time on Thursday mornings, and over his coffee, often shared snippets of his life with Rachel during their brief interactions. He'd speak of his time in the war, his voice growing a touch raspy with memories both painful and poignant. He spoke of his late wife, his love for her still palpable in his tone, and of his son who lived far across the country. His son, he explained, took care of his larger expenses, allowing him to maintain his independence in the small town he had always called home. Through these conversations, Rachel began to understand the man beyond his quiet demeanor. She glimpsed his fierce pride, a characteristic she recognized within herself, and she sympathized deeply with his desire to maintain his self-reliance, a value they both held dear. It wasn't just about giving him a meal anymore. It was about nurturing a quiet connection built on mutual respect and a shared understanding of life's quiet struggles. One fateful Thursday, the scent of sizzling bacon seemed a little less vibrant, the clatter of silverware a tad duller. Mr. Thompson's usual booth, by the sun-drenched window overlooking Main Street, sat empty. A hollow ache settled in Rachel's chest, like a missed beat in the rhythm of her day. The diner, usually a comforting cacophony of familiar sounds and faces, felt strangely vacant without his gentle presence. The bright yellow of the menu felt slightly less cheerful, and even the aroma of the freshly brewed coffee seemed to lack its usual warmth. Later, after a few hushed inquiries with other regulars, she learned that the veteran housing complex where Mr. Thompson resided was undergoing extensive renovations. The disruption made it difficult, if not impossible, for the elderly residents, especially those with limited mobility, to venture out. A wave of concern washed over Rachel. She pictured Mr. Thompson, confined to his temporary quarters, and hoped with all her heart that he would be able to return to his cherished routine soon, back to his familiar booth at Betty's Bistro. The following week, the humdrum of Rachel's routine was about to be shattered, replaced with a melody of unexpected connection. It was a Tuesday, and the midday sun cast long shadows across the linoleum floor of Betty's. The bell above the door chimed, heralding the arrival of 2 figures unlike any she normally encountered in Maplewood. They radiated an air of polish and sophistication that seemed out of place amongst the usual crowd of working folks and retirees. The woman, tall and elegant, with a tailored navy blazer and perfectly styled auburn hair, moved with a confidence that suggested a life far removed from the quiet rhythms of their small town. As she approached Rachel, a genuine and surprisingly warm smile touched her lips. "Are you Rachel?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of a northern accent. Rachel, her hands instinctively wiping down the counter, nodded slowly, a mixture of curiosity and slight apprehension swirling within her. How did this polished stranger know her name? The woman extended her hand, her grip firm yet gentle. "I'm Emily," she said, her smile widening, "Mr. Thompson's daughter-in-law." The man beside her, impeccably dressed in a grey suit, offered a polite nod. "And I'm Mark, her husband." The story they unfolded was as surprising as it was touching. They revealed that they had driven all the way from a bustling city hours away to check on Mr. Thompson, spurred by their concern over the ongoing housing renovations. Rachel felt a lump rise in her throat, a mix of relief and a strange flutter of excitement. Mark's voice, warm and filled with affection for his father, explained that Mr. Thompson, a man of few words and even fewer outward displays of emotion, had spoken so fondly of her. He had recounted her acts of quiet kindness and unspoken generosity, things she had done without expecting any recognition. that they had felt compelled to come and meet the woman who had so deeply touched his life. Rachel felt her cheeks flush with a blush that crept up her neck and tingled in her ears. Then, she watched in stunned silence as Mark carefully pulled out a small, worn, leather-bound book, its pages dog-eared and filled with precise, handwritten entries. It was Mr. Thompson's meticulous expense diary, a chronicle of his daily expenditures, and nestled within its pages was the evidence of her secret: the extra slice of pie, the occasional free coffee, the discounted meal. Dad's always been a man of independence, fiercely proud. But he had to admit, Mark said, his voice thick with emotion, his eyes fixed on Rachel with a mixture of gratitude and admiration, that someone was looking out for him. He's incredibly grateful for your kindness, Rachel, and so are we. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cafe table as Rachel, Mark, and Emily leaned in close, their voices a hushed murmur against the backdrop of clinking cups and soft chatter. For the last hour, their conversation had flowed like a gentle stream, winding its way through the life of their recently departed friend, Mr. Thompson. They shared fond memories of his quirky habits and the quiet wisdom he'd imparted over the years. The discussion then naturally shifted to Rachel, her own aspirations bubbling to the surface. She spoke of her dreams, not of grand ambitions, but of the quiet joy she found in books and the simple act of connecting with others. This led seamlessly to the core of their meeting, the possibility of Rachel managing a new bookstore and cafe, a project that had been brewing in Mark and Emily's minds for months, and that they were now planning to bring to life just a few blocks away. The air hummed with anticipation. Mark, his eyes reflecting a genuine warmth, spoke of Rachel's innate kindness, his words laced with a sincerity that resonated deep within her soul. "Rachel," he said, his voice soft yet firm, "you've shown us, through your consistent acts of service and your compassionate heart, what it truly means to be a part of and to serve a community." Rachel, her cheeks flushed a delicate pink, felt her heart flutter like a trapped bird. The offer, the sheer possibility of this incredible opportunity, sent a jolt of excitement through her veins, but it was quickly tempered by a wave of hesitancy. Doubt whispered in her ear, reminding her of her perceived lack of experience, the unfamiliar weight of responsibility that this role might entail. She found herself chewing on her lip, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibility and apprehension. The following week, the atmosphere was markedly different. The casual chatter and comfortable familiarity were replaced by the slightly more formal air of an interview. Rachel found herself seated across from Mark and Emily, a notebook resting on her lap, a knot tightening in her stomach. Despite the gnawing nerves that threatened to overwhelm her, Rachel's passion, carefully nurtured over years of reading and caring for others, began to shine through. She spoke of Mr. Thompson, the small acts of kindness she had shown him, the comfort she had found in his simple stories. She recounted these moments not as a resume builder, but as a testament to her beliefs. Mark and Emily listened intently, their eyes sparkling with a mixture of admiration and hope. They were impressed not just by Rachel's unwavering dedication to improving her life, but also by her profound and infectious love for literature. It was clear she had an almost intuitive ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen and heard. They saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who understood the very essence of what they wanted their bookstore to be. A smile spread across Mark's face, reflecting the shared enthusiasm. "Rachel," he announced, his voice filled with genuine pleasure, "we want to offer you the position of manager at the Storybook Nook, a cozy bookstore cafe that we envision becoming the heart of this community." The words, spoken with such warmth and conviction, settled on Rachel like a comforting blanket, the initial nervousness melting away to make room for a hopeful anticipation. The what-ifs had transformed into, "it is happening." The transition was challenging. Rachel juggled her part-time diner shifts with intensive training sessions with Emily, learning the ropes of managing a business. Yet she remained steadfast, driven by the promise of a better future for Lily and the chance to honor Mr. Thompson's legacy. The bookstore, once a dilapidated space, transformed into a warm, inviting haven under Rachel's care. It became a place where children giggled over story time, students studied, and the elderly reminisced about the good old days. Mr. Thompson, thrilled by Rachel's new venture, became the store's unofficial greeter, sharing tales from his own past as a bookstore owner. His health improved with the joy of having a purpose once again. Rachel implemented a pay-it-forward program, inspired by her own experience, allowing patrons to anonymously buy books and coffee for those in need. Teachers began bringing their classes for reading sessions, and the local book club found a permanent home. As Rachel watched her dream unfold, she often thought of Mr. Thompson's words about accepting help. His humility had taught her that sometimes the most significant acts of kindness are not grand gestures, but rather the small, quiet moments that remind us of our shared humanity. Rachel had learned that by offering her help, she had not only changed Mr. Thompson's life, but had also paved the way for her own happiness and success. The grand opening of the Storybook Nook was a day that Rachel would never forget. The townsfolk gathered, eager to support their local hero. Rachel felt a profound sense of gratitude as she looked upon the faces of her community, realizing that her act of compassion had not only touched Mr. Thompson, but had rippled out to embrace them all. Mr. Thompson, with a proud smile, cut the ribbon to the bookstore that now stood as a testament to the power of human connection. Rachel hugged her daughter Lily tightly, knowing that together they had turned a page on a new chapter of their lives, one filled with hope, love, and the boundless possibilities that come from a simple act of kindness. The Storybook Nook grew to be more than just a bookstore. It became a symbol of the strength and unity of Maplewood. Rachel had unwittingly created a legacy that would live on through the pages of countless books and the hearts of those who walked through its doors. And as Rachel looked into the eyes of her customers, young and old, she knew she had found her purpose, not just as a businesswoman, but as a guardian of stories, a weaver of dreams, and a keeper of the community's soul.